We explain the 1945 World Series.
World War II came to its conclusion that year with the surrender of Germany and the death of Hitler. The world had seen the use of atomic bombs, Dresden, Iwo Jima, and the surrender of Japan. Before the end of the war, FDR had passed away and Harry Truman took over. The Yalta and Potsdam agreements would decide the fate of the post-war world. The UN was created, Korea was split in half, and the world would learn the true toll of the Holocaust as troops liberated death camps. Animal Farm warned of Soviet totalitarianism, and Stuart Little opened up children's literature. The Lost Weekend and Mildred Pierce were on screens, Carousel was on stage, and Truman presented the Fair Deal. Against the backdrop of the ending war, the Detroit Tigers met the Chicago Cubs for the fourth time. The draft had left teams with unconventional players on their roster, like Pete Gray, who played for the St. Louis Browns for the season. Pete had lost an arm in a childhood accident and learned to hit and catch with only his left hand. In a doubleheader at Yankee Stadium that season, he hit 5 hits, 2 RBIs, and batted at .218. Disabled vets saw him as a symbol of what could still be accomplished. The series is probably most famous for the legendary Curse of the Billy Goat, which Cubs fans believe kept them out of the World Series until 2016. Steve O'Neill's Tigers returned to the series with the gift of recently returned from war Hank Greenberg and recently returned Virgil Trucks, and the memory of beating the Cubs 10 years earlier in 1935. The Tigers beat the Senators by a game and a half for the pennant. Mayo led the team's batting average that season and won a Golden Glove for his .980 fielding percentage. Newhouser pitched to win the Triple Crown and even led both leagues in wins, strikeouts, and ERA. The Cubs were, of course, looking to win for the first time since 1908, and they had a new weapon. During the season, Charlie Grimm's Cubs had bought pitching ace Hank Borowy from the Yankees, who was already winning 11 of 13 games. The Cubs ended up winning 98 games that season, were led in batting averages by Phil Cavarrette with a .355. Hack Wilson was seen walking over to the third base he'd been stranded at in 1935, and when asked why, he said he wanted to see if he was still standing there. Several authors have called this the worst World Series ever. In fact, sports writer Frank Graham said it was like watching the fat man versus the tall man at the office picnic. It would be the last wartime series in the 3-4 setup, with the games being played at Briggs Field in Detroit, and then the last games at Wrigley. They would also be the last World Series games the Cubs would play at Wrigley until 2016.